The Galru had always prided themselves on their advanced civilization. Their homeworld, Valtura, was a utopia of intellectual achievement where art, science, and philosophy flourished. The Galru believed themselves to be the pinnacle of evolution, destined to spread their wisdom across the galaxy. Their exploratory fleet had mapped hundreds of planets, making contact with countless species, all of whom had marveled at the Galru's superior technology and benevolent demeanor. It was during one of these routine explorations that the Galru first encountered Earth. A small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable star, Earth seemed insignificant at first glance. The planet's atmospheric readings showed a mix of oxygen and nitrogen, typical of many life-supporting worlds, and the surface was predominantly covered in water. The dominant species, humans, were noted for their relatively recent technological development. They had just begun to explore space, their reach extending no further than their own moon. Commander Jul, an experienced Galru explorer, led the mission. Known for his unyielding confidence and quick judgment, Jul viewed Earth as just another world to be catalogued and enlightened. His orders were clear: establish peaceful contact, assess the humans' potential, and, if deemed worthy, offer them the gift of Galru knowledge. The Galru ship, a sleek vessel of immense size and power, entered Earth's orbit silently. It hovered above the atmosphere, scanning the surface, collecting data on human civilization. Jul was intrigued by what he saw. These humans were diverse, their cultures rich and varied. But they were also divided, with a history of conflict that puzzled the Galru. Why would a species so similar fight among themselves? Choosing a remote location to make first contact, Jul decided on a small desert town in the southwestern region of North America. The town was quiet, its inhabitants unaware of the alien ship descending from the sky. Jul saw this as a perfect opportunity to observe the humans without causing widespread panic. The Galru ship landed without a sound, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to human sensors. Jul and his team of scientists disembarked, their silver suits glinting in the harsh sunlight. The heat was intense, but the Galru were unfazed, their suits designed to adapt to any environment. As they approached the town, the humans began to emerge from their homes, drawn by a strange sense of something amiss. The Galru, with their tall, slender bodies and luminous eyes, were a sight unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Fear and curiosity mixed in the eyes of the townsfolk as they gathered around the alien visitors. Jul stepped forward, his voice calm and commanding as he addressed the crowd through the universal translator. "People of Earth," he began, "we come in peace. We are the Galru, explorers of the galaxy, seeking to share our knowledge and learn from other civilizations. We offer you the opportunity to join us in the pursuit of wisdom and enlightenment." The humans exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to respond. Jul expected awe, reverence, perhaps even gratitude. But instead he saw something he had not anticipated: defiance. A woman pushed her way to the front of the crowd, her eyes locked on Jul with a mixture of fear and determination. She was tall, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair pulled back in a tight braid. Her clothes were simple, but her posture was that of someone who had faced adversity and survived. "We don't want anything from you," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You should leave." Jul was taken aback. This was not the reaction he had expected. "We mean you no harm," he replied, trying to sound reassuring. "We come to offer you knowledge and peace." But the woman shook her head. "We've heard that before," she said, her voice growing stronger. "From others who came with promises only to bring destruction. We don't trust you." Jul's patience was wearing thin. He was not used to being questioned, let alone by a primitive species. "You do not understand," he said, his tone becoming more forceful. "We are here to help you. You should be grateful." The woman's eyes narrowed and she took a step closer. "Grateful? For what? For being treated like children who can't take care of themselves? We've survived this long without your help, and we'll continue to survive without it." Jul could feel the tension rising in the crowd. He had encountered resistance before, but never like this. The humans were not just afraid, they were angry. They saw the Galru as invaders, not saviors. Jul realized that he needed to take control of the situation before it escalated further. "We will take some of you with us," he announced, deciding that a direct approach was necessary. "For study and to ensure that we understand your needs. This is for your own good." The woman's eyes blazed with fury. "You'll do no such thing," she spat. "We won't be your lab rats." Without warning, a shot rang out. A young man in the crowd had pulled out a rifle, his hands shaking as he fired at the Galru. The bullet struck Jules' suit, but the advanced material absorbed the impact. The Galru soldiers, trained for combat despite their peaceful mission, immediately responded, subduing the man and others who had begun to reach for weapons. The situation was spiraling out of control. Jules ordered his team to retreat to the ship, shocked by the sudden violence. The humans were not like any other species they had encountered. They were unpredictable, dangerous. As the Galru ship lifted off, leaving the town behind, Jules felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. These humans were not to be underestimated. The Galru returned to their homeworld with a mixture of confusion and frustration. What was supposed to be a simple mission had turned into a debacle. Commander Jules' report to the High Council was met with disbelief. How could such a primitive species pose any threat to the Galru? The Council dismissed the incident as an anomaly, a result of poor planning and miscommunication. They assured Jules that with a larger force and a more strategic approach, the humans would soon be brought to heel. But Jules knew better. He had seen the fire in the eyes of that human woman, the defiance in the face of overwhelming power. There was something about these Deathworlders, as he had started to call them, that set them apart from other species the Galru had encountered. They did not fear the Galru as others had. Instead, they resisted with a tenacity that was both alarming and perplexing. The High Council, however, was determined to continue the mission. They dispatched a fleet of ships to Earth, each carrying a contingent of soldiers and scientists. Their orders were clear: subdue the humans, establish control, and begin the process of integrating them into the Galru's interstellar society. When the fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, they were met with a surprise. The humans had detected their approach and were prepared. Although their technology was far inferior, they had mobilized their military forces, deploying aircraft, missiles, and even nuclear weapons in a desperate bid to defend their planet. The first battles were chaotic. The Galru ships easily evaded the humans' crude attacks, using their advanced shields and cloaking technology to remain largely undetected. But the humans did not give up. They adapted quickly, using their knowledge of the terrain and their own ingenuity to launch surprise attacks, hitting the Galru where they least expected it. In one particularly devastating attack, a group of human fighter jets managed to penetrate the shields of a Galru cruiser, causing significant damage before being shot down. The Galru were stunned. No species had ever inflicted such losses on them before. The humans were proving to be far more resilient and resourceful than anticipated. As the war dragged on, the Galru began to realize that their traditional tactics were ineffective against the humans. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not rely on overwhelming numbers or superior firepower. Instead, they used guerrilla tactics, striking from the shadows, disappearing before the Galru could retaliate. They exploited their knowledge of the terrain, turning cities into deadly mazes, forests into traps, and even the oceans into battlefields. The Galru, accustomed to swift victories and peaceful resolutions, found themselves bogged down in a protracted conflict that they did not understand. The humans were relentless, their attacks growing more sophisticated with each passing day. They had an uncanny ability to endure pain and hardship, pushing beyond the limits of what should have been possible. Jules, now a frontline commander, began to experience a creeping sense of dread. The humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting with a deeper, more primal drive. They fought with a ferocity that seemed to come from somewhere deep within, a place that the Galru could not comprehend. The High Council, far removed from the front lines, still did not grasp the severity of the situation. They continued to send reinforcements, believing that sheer numbers would eventually overwhelm the humans. But as the weeks turned into months, the Galru forces found themselves increasingly outmaneuvered and outmatched. The turning point came during the Battle of the Amazon. The Galru, hoping to gain a strategic advantage by capturing the vast rainforests, launched a major offensive. They expected an easy victory, believing that the dense jungle would be no match for their advanced technology. But the humans had anticipated this move. They had laid traps throughout the jungle, using the terrain to their advantage. The Galru troops, unused to such tactics, were decimated. The humans struck from the shadows, using hit-and-run tactics that left the Galru disoriented and vulnerable. By the time the Galru realized what was happening, it was too late. Their forces were in disarray, their morale shattered. In the aftermath of the battle, Jul stood among the ruins of what was supposed to be a triumphant victory. His soldiers, once so confident in their superiority, were now demoralized and terrified. They had been outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outfought by a species they had once considered primitive. For the first time in his life, Jul felt fear. Not just fear of defeat, but fear of the humans themselves. They were unlike any enemy the Galru had ever faced. They were unpredictable, relentless, and utterly determined. Jul realized with a sinking feeling that the Galru had made a grave mistake in underestimating them. As the war continued to spiral out of control, Jul knew that the Galru were facing a challenge unlike anything they had ever encountered. The humans were not just fighting for their planet, they were fighting for something far more important. And that made them the most dangerous enemy the Galru had ever faced. The war had raged on for nearly a year, with no end in sight. The Galru, once so confident in their superiority, were now struggling to maintain their foothold on Earth. Their initial underestimation of the humans had cost them dearly, and they were now locked in a brutal conflict that was draining their resources and morale. Desperate for answers, the Galru leadership ordered a deep investigation into human history and culture, hoping to find some clue, some weakness they could exploit to end the war. What they found instead was a revelation that sent shockwaves through their ranks. The humans were a species forged in conflict. Their history was a long and bloody one, filled with wars, revolutions, and conquests. They had fought each other for centuries, honing their skills in the art of war. They had endured plagues, famines, and natural disasters that would have wiped out lesser species. Yet they had always emerged stronger. The Galru scholars were stunned by what they uncovered. Humanity's greatest achievements had often come in the wake of their darkest hours. The destruction of their cities in world wars had led to unprecedented technological advancements. The ravages of disease had driven them to develop medicines that saved millions of lives. Every challenge they faced seemed to make them more resilient, more determined. But there was something even more disturbing that the Galru discovered: the concept of sacrifice. To the Galru, the idea of willingly giving one's life for a cause was almost incomprehensible. Their society valued knowledge, progress, and the preservation of life above all else. The thought of sacrificing oneself for something intangible, a belief, a nation, a loved one, was alien to them. Yet for humans, sacrifice was a central tenet of their existence. Their history was filled with stories of individuals who had laid down their lives for others, for ideals, for causes greater than themselves. It was this willingness to die for something they believed in that made humans so dangerous. The Galru leadership struggled to understand this mindset. How could they defeat an enemy that did not fear death? How could they negotiate with a species that saw sacrifice as a virtue rather than a tragedy? As they pondered these questions, the humans continued to press their advantage. They launched daring raids deep into Galru territory, striking at key installations and supply lines. Many of these missions were effectively suicide missions, carried out by small teams of soldiers who knew they would not return. Yet they went willingly, driven by a sense of duty and a fierce determination to protect their world. One such raid took place on a Galru research facility in the mountains of the Himalayas. The facility was heavily guarded, its location known only to a select few within the Galru command, yet somehow the humans had found it. A team of elite soldiers infiltrated the facility, planting explosives and disabling critical systems. When the Galru defenders realized what was happening, it was too late. The humans had already completed their mission and detonated the explosives, destroying the facility and themselves in the process. The loss was a devastating blow to the Galru, both strategically and psychologically. They had underestimated the humans yet again, and they were paying the price. The fear that had begun to take root in the hearts of the Galru soldiers now spread to their leaders. They began to realize that they were facing an enemy that could not be defeated through conventional means. The humans' willingness to sacrifice themselves was something the Galru could not comprehend, and it was this very trait that made them so formidable. The Galru had always believed that their superior technology and intellect would be enough to conquer any foe, but they had never encountered a species like the humans who fought not just with weapons, but with a spirit that could not be broken. As the Galru leadership convened to discuss their next move, a sense of despair hung over them. They had come to Earth seeking to enlighten and uplift, but they had found themselves in a war they could not win. The humans were not just survivors, they were fighters, driven by a deep-seated need to protect their world and their way of life. The Galru were beginning to understand that this war was not about territory or resources. It was a war for the very soul of humanity, and the humans were willing to pay any price to win it. The war had reached a tipping point. The Galru were battered, their forces stretched thin, and their morale shattered. What had begun as a mission of enlightenment had turned into a desperate struggle for survival. The humans, who had once seemed so primitive and insignificant, had proven themselves to be a formidable and relentless enemy. The final battle took place in the ruins of a once great city. The Galru had chosen this location for their last stand, hoping to crush the remaining pockets of human resistance and finally bring an end to the conflict. The city, once a bustling metropolis, was now a wasteland of shattered buildings and debris, a stark reminder of the devastation that the war had wrought. Commander Jules, who had led the initial mission to Earth, now found himself at the forefront of this final assault. He was a changed being. The confidence and arrogance that had once defined him now replaced with a grim determination. He knew that this was their last chance. If they failed here, the Galru would be forced to retreat from Earth, their mission a complete failure. The humans had fortified their position in a massive fortress at the center of the city. The structure, once a symbol of human achievement, was now a bastion of their resistance. The Galru had thrown everything they had into this battle, but the humans had dug in deep, turning the fortress into an impenetrable stronghold. As the Galru forces advanced, they were met with a ferocity that they had not anticipated. The humans fought with everything they had, using every weapon, every piece of rubble, every ounce of strength to repel the invaders. The battle raged for hours, the streets running red with blood, the air thick with smoke and the sound of explosions. Jules knew that the time had come for a decisive move. He ordered his forces to breach the walls of the fortress, hoping to end the battle in one final, devastating blow. The Galru soldiers, driven by desperation and fear, charged forward, their weapons blazing. They managed to breach the walls, but what awaited them inside was a nightmare. The humans had rigged the entire fortress with explosives, creating a massive trap. Jules realized too late what they had done. The humans were willing to destroy themselves and the fortress, rather than let it fall into Galru hands. As the explosives detonated, the fortress collapsed in a massive explosion that shook the earth. The shockwave tore through the city, leveling buildings and sending debris flying in all directions. The Galru forces, caught in the blast, were decimated. Jules, caught in the chaos, was thrown to the ground, his body battered and broken. He lay among the rubble, the sounds of battle fading into a distant roar. His vision blurred, his thoughts scattered. He had failed. The Galru had failed. As he lay there, his life slipping away, Jules thought of the humans. He had come to Earth believing that they were a primitive, inferior species, but they had shown him something that he had never expected, something that terrified him more than any weapon or technology. They had shown him the power of their will, their determination, their unwavering belief in their cause. The Galru had come to Earth seeking knowledge and power, but they had found something far more dangerous, a species that feared nothing, not even death. The humans had proven themselves to be a force that could not be conquered, a spirit that could not be broken. As darkness closed in, Jules understood the truth. The Galru had lost the war long before this final battle. They had lost the moment they underestimated the humans, the moment they failed to understand the depth of their resolve. The last thing Jules saw before he died was the ruins of the fortress, still burning, still defiant. The humans had won, not just because of their weapons or their tactics, but because of something much deeper, something that the Galru could never hope to defeat. They had won because they were willing to fight for what they believed in, no matter the cost.